When designing a character, where do you typically start? Do you start with an ability or a kit, a thematic, something else? It really depends on the character. Some characters on League of Legends start from a kit. Oriana's example was started from the designer's idea of like, what if a character manipulated a ball? Mbessa started as like, well, what if you could dash when you cast a spell? So some characters start from an ability. Other characters will start from a person. So as an example, Jinx started from a piece of concept art drawn by Katie D'Souza, her artist, that was like, hey, here's this crazy girl with a bunch of guns. And I was like, ooh, we could make that. And so it really just depends on what you're trying to do. Characters can really come from anywhere. When I start designing a character, what I prefer, is my personal preference, is I like starting with art. And so my preference as a designer is to see a piece of concept art by an artist and be like, I'm going to make that person. And the reason I like doing it that way, and again, that's not the only way to do it. There's plenty of other ways to do it. Most designers I know tend to start from like a design mechanic. But the reason I like starting with like, I'm going to make her, or I'm going to make him, or that monster, or whatever, is my design process often starts with the question of, how should this character feel? And so this is an idea that if you see someone like Jinx, just looking at her splash art, looking at who she is, the weapon she's carrying, the smile on her face in many of her splash arts, you get an expectation of like who they are and how they play and how they feel. And so I often like asking myself like how a character should feel, and that helps inform for me what type of kit they should have. So as an example with Echo, one of the things we saw about Echo is like he was supposed to be really smart. He was always intended to be like this really, really intelligent kid, the boy genius, right? And so when I was working on Echo, and like I knew the character I was making was like, you know, this time kid who was really, really smart and scrappy, I was like, okay, I need to find a way to make this guy feel smart. I need to feel like Echo is not only like outplaying you because he's an assassin, but also he's outthinking you sometimes. And that's where Echo's W comes from. Echo's W, where he like calls a shot and says, you're going to be there in a few seconds, and then he like jumps in and stuns you. That is intended to make Echo to some degree feel smart. Whereas Jinx is supposed to feel like kind of like manic and high adrenaline and a little crazy. And that's where her passive comes from. Where it's like, hey, when you get this passive, it has this huge decaying movement speed buff, and it's kind of like this use it or lose it moment where you're like, okay, now what am I going to do with this? I'm going to run after someone else, right? And like that's intended to spike your adrenaline, and kind of like replicate how Jinx probably feels in that moment to some degree, and make you feel that way. And then of course Jinx also has a rocket launcher and a minigun, and those are very much like, I want you to feel like you have a rocket launcher, and I want you to feel like you have a minigun, right? And so when I was looking at Jinx and I saw those guns, I was like, okay, she's got a rocket launcher. What is a rocket launcher going to do? Obviously, giant, like big AoE attacks, right? And so I kind of went with like big, slow AoE attacks. That felt rocket launcher. And then minigun, I don't think I perfectly delivered on minigun for what it's worth. I think some of my other takes on Jinx's minigun were like stronger minigun fantasy, but like it's okay. And minigun is like, okay, you attack really, really, really fast and shoot like a stream of bullets, right? There was a version of Jinx's miniguns where like she would stand still and shoot like literal like Lulu picks streams of bullets. And so like you'd just be like, right? And like that was pretty cool, but it just wasn't as functional from a gameplay perspective. It turns out 80 carries like really need to be able to kite and things like that. So I think there's definitely like stronger takes on a minigun in terms of just the mechanic in a vacuum. But yeah, it's all about, I like making a character from a piece of art because then I can like think about how do I want them to feel. And if you're like thinking about like, well, hey, how do I apply that as a designer? You know, if you're a designer, it's kind of like think in your head how I want them to feel and like come up with some like descriptive words that you could potentially capture in a game mechanic. And so your word could be like, I want them to feel tough. Okay, what's a mechanic that makes a character feel tough? Maybe a shield. Maybe Leona's W where you can't bring her down. I want them to feel scary. Okay, well, what's a mechanic that makes you like fear this character? One of the good ones I think in this case is Fiddlesticks. Fiddlesticks ult legitimately makes that character feel scary, because if you don't know where he is, he could just appear on you and you're dead, right? And Fiddlesticks is fear passive, where if he hits you from out of vision, it fears you. That also makes him feel a little scary and spooky, because it's like, hey, if this character manages to sneak around and take you by surprise, you're dead, right? And so, like, I think Fiddlesticks can feel a little scary. Another one, like, Nocturne makes you, like, fearful and claustrophobic when he ults, right? Because he turns the lights off and you're like, I can't see anything. I don't know what's happening. I don't know where he is. I don't know where my teammates are. You feel isolated, right? And so, yeah, I think that's like a way to think about it, is scary. Why does Morgana ult require to tether for 3 seconds until root? It's not season 2 anymore. I feel like it needs to be shortened. I disagree with Morgana's ult needing to be shortened. I think it's a pretty cool, compelling spell. If anything, she probably just needs more defense while happening. Like, I don't think it should be like just faster so people can't get out. I think maybe if anything, Morgana just needs a better tool to, like, for herself to make sure it hits. It's like, as an example, imagine Morgana drained health from them while it was going, so she was hard to bring down, or she got like a bunch of armor and MR, so she was just tankier during that moment. Things like that I think could potentially like make that ultimate, you know, stronger, but I don't think it's like all that far off, to be honest. Who plays Morgana? A lot of people play Morgana. Deathmark Morgana is the 3rd or 4th most popular support in the game. So a lot of people play it. Everybody, oh, by the way, so everybody, I learned about a new Ahri build recently, and it changed my life. So for all of you who play Ahri, buy a Lich Bane. That item is insane on Ahri. Because, so my problem with Ahri was always like, okay, I go in, and I use my spells, and then they're not dead. And then I'm sad, right? And I cry in real life. And then Melee here suggested I buy a Lich Bane while playing her. And then they're just dead. They're just dead. Like, I go in, and then I don't kill them, and then I auto-attack them and they die. It's great. Anyways, highly recommend playing some Ahri. Strong character, definitely needs big nerfs. Big nerfs. Yeah. That's the true Ahri gameplay, though. You go in, use everything, and leave sad. So my experience with Ahri is I go in, I use everything, I kill a guy, and then they kill me before I can ult out. I get, like, rooted. It's hard. It's a hard life being an Ahri player. I wonder if Ahri support would be good with Lich Bane. I feel like the power spike would be too late, because you have to buy... You need Malignance for your ultimate. Right? And then by the time you get Lich Bane, like, I feel like you're either already winning or you've lost, right? That's like so... I mean, I guess you could do the Lux route and just steal all the kills from your AD carry. It's good. Use the same build. Okay, Melee, we should try that. You play Caitlyn, I'll play Ahri. I'm going to take all your kills. And then I think I can get second item Lich Bane really fast and carry. That sounds like the optimal support play to me. Steal, repurpose, yeah. That's the way to do it. Repurpose the kills from your AD carry. It's not like they were going to use them anyways, right? Like, let's be real here, right? Like, what's Caitlyn going to do with 300 gold that support Lux couldn't do better? You know?